You already know what time it is. This is Art of MMA, the podcast. I'm your host, Mike Ginn. Man, a lot of action going on this last week. Exciting stuff. But first, let me introduce my guys. I'm talking about Brandon, the mechanic, Catino. Brandon, what's up, buddy?
Hey, man. Good to be back on the show.
And the other gentleman, I'm sure, is very happy it's not Victory Tuesday. I'm talking about the savage Sergio da Silva. No football talk today, Sergio.
What's up, my man? How are you? What's up, Brandon?
Hey.
I mean, we're both kind of depressed. This last weekend. Thank God MMA saved our day because football was definitely not worth talking about this week. So let's jump right into a few things we got going on today, guys. First and foremost, we're definitely going to talk about that UFC main event. Figueiredo and Moreno was everything it was advertised to be. The ladies in Bellator went through a 5-round war, so that's something to talk about as well. Going to get to some fan questions later. But the big story going around this week that could change, maybe change. We'll see how the lawsuit pans out. But could change the face of UFC, at least their pay structure, is that lawsuit. Yahoo broke the story this week that there's a class action lawsuit going on. Fighters like back in 2014, fighters like Kung Lee, John Fitch, Nate Quarry, they filed a lawsuit basically arguing that UFC was monopolizing the pay structure. And of course, at the time, they're buying up companies like Strikeforce and WEC and other companies like that. So nowadays, of course, you have a little bit more competition with PFL. Bellator is back to being a major player again since Scott Coker took over. Let me ask you guys this, because both of y'all have obviously fought professionally, whether it's Brandon with Glory and Combat at the Capitol and Sergio with CFFC and some other promotions, including Bellator.
I fought for Bellator under both regimes, under Bjorn Rebney and Scott Coker.
Let me ask you something. Do you think the lawsuit, all right, Sergio, I'll start with you. Do you think the lawsuit has merit in that it'll actually somehow pan out for the fighters, or do you think it's going to get dismissed eventually?
Well, I'm a little okay. Well, to answer your question, I know more than the most on this subject because I was part of the group when that started with the guys from the UFC. I forgot who put me in that group, and I remember why. I had some Brazilian guys that were in the UFC at the time, and they needed a translator, and they wanted to be involved with that, so they put me in on the WhatsApp group. And it's funny enough, I actually got out of it like last year because it was just literally all day long messages, like hundreds and hundreds of messages. Even I had it on mute. It was so annoying when I had to open up my WhatsApp and it was there. To answer your question, I do think there's merits. I think a lot of the points that they were talking about, and that was back in the day, because now I'm sure there's even more points. I remember one thing that they did speak on a lot that made a lot of sense, and I hope I'm not probably speaking out of hand here, but
here comes the clip of the week.
You know what? Mike, you're holding me back, man. But one thing they did bring up was the fact that PFL, there's a manager there. I'm not going to throw any names out there, but who was involved. Everyone is going to know who he is. He's a major manager in the UFC right now. He was a major manager.
Ali.
There you go. You can say the name. Not I. So he was working with PFL, and he had a bunch of people. Which that's a conflict of interest. You can't work for the promotion, and
he was an executive with them. That was a big deal when they were World Series of Fighting.
Correct. So he had all his guys that weren't even the top fighters getting top pay, and guys that were overqualified. They were complaining. That was one thing that they were bringing up. How it's literally illegal to do that. You can't work for a company.
Conflict of interest. Yeah.
Yeah, it'd be the equivalent of like Sean Shelby managing fighters. And I mean, there was a bunch of stuff about that. There was a bunch of stuff about how fighters were getting like below minimum wage if you broke it down. There was no health insurance at the time. I think UFC then added the health insurance once they started to get a whiff of that was coming out. So yeah, they had a lot of good merit, and that was like 2016 when I was joined on that group, 2017 maybe. So yeah, I think they're gonna get. They were trying to implement the Ali Act that they have in boxing. They're trying to have the cross promotion fights where instead of having a fighter at 185 and just have like a belt, and just only be fight for the UFC, basically be a bidding war where like Bellator can take the UFC 185 and try to match him and make a fight at Bellator. They were trying to make that happen, so to avoid being monopolized. So if you have the best fighters, now you no longer have to say, you know what, only the UFC is the best organization. Because now you might actually say a guy like Patricio Pitbull, who I like, if he fights and beats the UFC, so guess what? Who has the best featherweight now? That's not a question about who might be. We know who it is. So now it's going to be more inclined for guys to join Bellator because they're going to be like, wait, the best fighters are not only in the UFC, they're in Bellator as well.
Brandon, we were just talking, I think last week, about the starting pay structure in UFC being 12 and 12, right?
Yeah.
Do you think that it's feasible? Because we were just talking about some of the stuff off air about how many events UFC's done in a row, how every week there's an event, there's this, there's that. And we have a fan question later in this episode talking about that. Do you think it's feasible for the UFC to pay them more?
Yeah, I do, because the reason why is because of their TV deal. That's where it is. It's because the fighters don't really get a piece of that action like how the NBA, NFL, NHL do. Because I think what they're usually like at 50%. I think they're trying to say that fighters are probably really at like 12 to like 14% of that revenue. So I mean, if you really take the money that they're getting from ESPN, from Disney, they can really show that out to the fighters. Because think about it too. Because also too, even like Fight Island, they got paid for that. They didn't spend any money on the cage being set up or anything like that. That was Abu Dhabi themselves has spent money on that. So I mean, that money that they got paid for that, they could have put that to the fighters.
So they're saying that the UFC has up to $5 billion at risk for arguably back pay, I guess you would call it, for some of the fighters that have fought over the years in the UFC. My only argument, and we'll take I'm going to go ahead and say the magic word this episode to ban us from Google advertising, but I'll take COVID out of the situation, right? Because right now they're not getting the fan money. Like, they're not getting the crowds. They're not getting the extra revenue from the in-house crowd, which arguably has always been the lesser part of how much money they make on a show, right? Like, most of their money's always been TV revenue, advertisers, marketing. You see all the brands on the cage and stuff, and Reebok has the deal, so fighters can't even wear their own fight kits anymore. I'll ask you this, and Sergio, you might actually probably have a little bit more insight on this as well. If UFC started paying these guys more and girls more, sorry, didn't mean to leave ladies out. Sorry, Brandon. And if they started paying the fighters more, and there's always been the argument, I'll go back. In fact, speaking of ladies, I'll go back to Ronda Rousey. She had that famous blow up with Ariane over the fact that Ariane Celeste was making more than some of her opponents and some of the female fighters at the time who were out there putting their, quote unquote, putting their lives on the line. Is it a matter of UFC having the money and just doing something different with it? Or is it just a matter of them trying to structure it so they can keep doing, 50 events a year, 45 events a year?
I was going to say, to me, I think it's just, that's like, really want to say, like, because you can't put now, because remember, they were doing this before. Well,
my argument is that the same argument's always been for boxing, right? Like, boxing pays their fighters way more, but for less events.
Mm-hmm. But I'm saying is like, it's the Fertitta brothers. Remember, the way how they run their hotels with not working with, unions or anything like that. That to me is how they modeled the UFC.
It's the Vince McMahon model.
Yeah.
Sergio, what do you think is going to end up being the result of this lawsuit? If you had to just make a guess.
The fighters are going to be rewarded, compensated more fairly. And to answer your earlier question about, do I think it's a business? I think the UFC is just being greedy. I think there is more than enough money to pay a lot more guys. Even if it's 50 events a year, they're making a lot of money. Guys are making shit to fight. We all fight for fucking pennies on the dollar. Even in the outside of the UFC, forget about it. Inside of I knew guys who made more money outside of the UFC because of ticket sales. Because then when you go to the UFC, you don't make anything off the ticket sales.
Ticket sales and sponsors, right?
So yeah, so I know a lot of local guys, especially guys from Tiger Schulman actually, and a lot of like gyms in Long Island too that sold 200-300 tickets at a time. Plus they got sponsors and the first fight in the UFC. This is back in the day because right now I think it's 12-12 if I'm not mistaken. The opening pay, but back in the day when my guy Ryan LaFleur started, if I'm not mistaken, don't quote me, it was something like 3-3. Yeah. Think about that. So he's the guy I'm talking about. Actually, I remember having a conversation with him and him telling me something like, I can make more locally because he was a really popular kid. He sold a lot of tickets and he had a lot of sponsors. So he's like, bro, I think he said maybe my first 2 UFC fights, I was making more fighting on the regional scene. How fucking sad is that, bro?
Yeah.
And you also got fighters like Eddie Alvarez. One of the reasons why Eddie Alvarez took forever to sign with the UFC and come over is because he was making, and I don't want to put words in his mouth because it's been a number of years now, but I think he was making like 6 figures just in sponsorship.
Yeah. Because I was going to say that was one of the things too. Like you think about like with the UFC, when they switched over to being with Reebok, they said, no fighters, you can't wear your sponsors anymore. So now you're taking away more money from them because that's really how they were really getting paid.
And I'm pretty sure that's the reason why legends of the game that kind of helped them start off, like Ken Shamrock and Royce Gracie, really have nothing to do with the UFC anymore because they did bring up those issues and just got blackballed. Like when was the last time you saw Royce Gracie step in a UFC octagon for any kind of award or any kind of ceremony or anything? Ken Shamrock's completely blackballed from the UFC.
Tito Ortiz. Wrestling.
Tito Ortiz. Well, Tito kind of buried himself. That's a different. I don't know. On that note, on Tito Ortiz, we will go ahead and segue. Go ahead and talk about Bellator while we're at it. But first, real quick, Sergio was right. As we segue into Bellator, Yoel did end up signing with him, despite what Scott Coker said just the same day. The famous line always goes like, how do you know a promoter's lying? Just like a lawyer, they're moving their lips. I guess the negotiations were playing a little bit hardball, and Scott came out and was like, all right, it's over. And then Yoel probably dropped his price, and they're like, all right, cool, signed, done. So Yoel Romero will be into Bellator sometime in 2021. I think one of the fights I'd actually like to see is maybe him and Rumble, because Yoel's talking about going up in weight. He doesn't want to keep cutting weight, so we'll see. But that's out there. I just wanted to give Sergio his props because, he loves his validation.
I was confident, man. I had no doubt. Even when they said that, I said, hell yeah, he's going to go. That division,
I think most of us thought it was the right spot.
Yeah.
I just thought with them cutting people right now, I didn't think they'd spend the money.
That's 100% they would, because that's the best promotion to be in that division, with the exception of the top guys in the UFC. If you're going to go for depth, I think they're up there, man. Bellator's
especially
up there.
Since they just passed on Anderson.
They're up there, man.
But we'll see what happens with that. New flyweight champion in Bellator. Macfarlane lost. New champion Juliana Velasquez. Brandon, I'll let you go ahead and start on that one. Velasquez came out and kind of just used her distance, kept Macfarlane from getting close to her. We saw later in the fight when Macfarlane was able to take her down, the fight was a little bit different. Even though she got to take her down, Velasquez still was kind of decent enough, especially towards the end with a takedown right at the very end of the fight, to keep it balanced. What do you expect out of Juliana Velasquez going forward? Because it's not a very deep division. Not for Bellator anyway.
No, man. When I saw this fight, like, I didn't really think that she was so much bigger than Macfarlane. Like, when you look at them, it looked like they were in 2 different weight classes. But I mean, hey,
she was gigantic next to Ilima.
Yeah. I mean, hey, she did use her distance. She was really kind of keeping her at bay until she got taken down. I mean, probably I say what's next is probably she's gonna see Liz Carmouche, and Carmouche is gonna take that strap from her. Like I mean. So
no faith in her holding on to that
champion belt? Because I mean, Macfarlane was giving her props, but if Liz Carmouche is next, I think Liz Carmouche is just gonna take her out. Unless they give her another fight, she can feel good about herself, and then they give her Liz after that. Then I don't know. I just think Liz. I think Liz is gonna take that belt from her, though.
Sergio, what you think of that fight?
I was very impressed, but at the same time, I
Because
didn't.
both you and I thought that Macfarlane was going to win that one easily.
Yeah, because I thought Macfarlane was her strategy would have been different. I think she didn't try to implement her game plan, which would have been the ground game earlier on in the fight. I think she waited a little too long. That always drives me crazy. And it's always one thing I say about Ben Askren. Although in his last fight, obviously, it didn't work out in his favor with the Masvidal knockout, but he goes for the takedown
He
from
didn't
the
have
opening
time.
bell. Yeah. No, he was going for it. Masvidal just beat him to the attack, but he was going to go for the takedown. That's why his head was down. My point being is, you're really good at something, and that's where your chance to win this fight. My problem with Macfarlane is she thought she could beat
You
Juliana.
think she was intimidated by the size factor?
No, I think she thought that she could beat her on the feet. And when she realized that, hey, I think it was in the third round when she started to aggressively pursue the takedowns, she's like, I'm not going to beat this girl on the feet. Let me try to take her down. But that was a little bit too late. Should have wore her down, because when you're tired, your strikes are going to lose power too. You're not going to want to throw with as much commitment. And I think that if she would have attempted more takedowns from the opening bell, I think she would have had success. I think she could still beat her.
Sergio, I'll tell you this much. I think it's the first time I've ever seen a Brazilian want to stand up.
Yeah, I mean, I know
like Velasquez, when she had a chance to go on the ground with Macfarlane, she was like, no, and she stood it up. And I was just like, I never seen a Brazilian do that before.
There's a couple. Don't count them out. Edson, Marlon.
Shit, Edson will go on the ground with you. He doesn't do it, but he has a very good ground game.
I think he's just smart. He knows that if he's gonna.
But I will say one thing about the fight though. Like Macfarlane, to me, I felt like saying she did, like when she did go for the takedowns, I felt like she was having trouble, especially when she was doing that single leg, because she would pick her leg up, but then Velasquez would still be throwing punches at her. But the only thing that I want to really talk about in that fight that I noticed was, I think it was in the third round when she finally got her down to the ground, she had her up against the cage. So basically, Macfarlane was like over her face, like over Velasquez's face. So really, like, you couldn't really hit her face. But for some reason, Macfarlane kept on trying to. But if you look down, her body was open the entire time. It's like, why not just
something you might see on film later and like
hit that kidney, tire her out. But instead, she kept on trying to punch her in the head, but she really had no effect, because basically she would use Macfarlane's body to cover up her face, and she really wouldn't take that much damage. To me, man, go to the body. Like, if you guys been following me on Twitter, I've been posting a lot of stuff about body shots in fights, because a lot of people have been going to the body lately. And I'm telling you, Macfarlane, I think she could have really changed that fight around if she would have just kept on hitting the body over and over and over.
I think there was a lot of, we won't spend too much time talking about this one. I think there was a lot of things wrong with that fight. I don't think if there was a rematch, anything would be different, because I really think Velasquez would just use her distance a little bit better in the second fight. Now that she knows what Macfarlane's strength is, now they've seen each other. But there was a couple things wrong with that fight. One, Macfarlane, for one, got way out of shape. You can follow her social media as she tried to get back in shape for this fight. She ballooned way up and then had to cut all that weight back down before this fight. So I'm sure at some point there was some kind of cardio dump, just from the weight cut. And then two, the size difference. And no matter what your strategy is, because even Macfarlane said herself, and Mike Goldberg talked about it on the show, when she first saw her in the hotel lobby, she was like, oh my God, like, she is so big. When you kind of go into a fight like that, I just don't see anything happen. If they rematched it, I don't see anything that Macfarlane could probably do. Maybe go to the ground earlier, but I feel like Velasquez will be looking for it. I just don't see the result being any different. I'd like to see that Carmouche fight. I think that would be kind of more entertaining.
I think Carmouche is going to give her Juliana a very hard fight, because I think from the beginning
she's long and lanky too.
I think she's going to try to grapple more.
Yeah, and Carmouche has that length that I don't think Macfarlane has. Macfarlane's kind of compact and built a little bit stockier, so that'll be interesting. I don't think Macfarlane's done. I think she'll definitely bounce back, but it might be a minute before she gets back to that title picture. And then the only other thing I want to actually mention, because speaking of notable performances, right on the co-main event, I guess it was co-main event, Magomedov looked incredibly impressive. We never know what some of these fighters who've been fighting in different promotions around the world look like when they jump on, a bigger stage like Bellator or UFC. But he looked ready for it, and he looked impressive. I mean, Sergio, that was right up your alley with all the grappling, and he just...
Bro, he spiked him on his head, bro. That takedown where he rolled his neck over, I was like, damn, he's gonna it's just consistently. That pressure was. I'm surprised. He's a guy he's the only one who has a win over Peter Yan. I'm surprised, and I think that
Well, they
fight.
split. They've split.
Yeah, but I'm saying he's the only one who has a win over Peter Yan.
Yeah, no,
Yan
I
has one over
him,
but he's the only one that has one over Yan.
Yeah, it's Jan's only loss, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's definitely impressive. I think that guy has a very big future if Bellator continues to push him. We'll see.
He's gonna have a hard time if they match him up with the champ, Archuleta, which they will eventually. I think a good fight for him against Sergio Pettis. I think he takes Sergio Pettis down.
I don't think Sergio has a chance against him.
No, he doesn't. I agree.
I think Sergio is better off when he has somebody who's willing to kind of mix it up.
Yes,
if somebody's just a straight grappler. I don't think Sergio is going to stand a chance in that fight. The same problem he ran into in the UFC. What'd you say, Brandon?
I said Sergio. I think Pettis, he just likes to stand. You know, kind of really just like his big brother.
He's not quite as bad as his brother. I mean, not bad. But first of all, his brother has top level jiu-jitsu too. I think Sergio goes to the ground just a little bit more than Anthony, but both of them obviously like to go that Duke Rufus stand and bang, knock your head off type of style. So that is our talk for Bellator. Next segment, I've kind of battled back and around what we're going to call this segment, but for right now, I'm going to call it notable performances. There was a couple things I really want to point out from the UFC card this weekend. UFC 256, Figueiredo versus Moreno. That whole card was really awesome. But a couple things I want to point out. First off, props to Mackenzie Dern. Not only did she finally face she's lost a fight before, but I think this was probably her most adversity in a fight where she can't come back and won, because she did come back that third round and win that round to win the fight. But then also with a broken nose. And for one, Brandon, what do you think about what her coach said between the rounds, where he basically nah, it's fine. It's fine. Your nose isn't broken. It's fine.
Hey man, props to Perillo, man. Yo, he's one of the top coaches, in the MMA game with boxing. I mean, hey, it's one of those things where it's like, if you make it, it's like, the way how I think about it is like, it's with the kid. If a baby falls down and you make it a big deal, they're gonna cry. If you see a baby fall and you go, hey, you fell, then if you don't make it a big deal, the baby won't make it a big deal. So I think what he was just trying to do, he was trying to tell her, hey, don't make it a big deal. Let's just keep our composure. You're doing a good job. Let's win this fight.
Sergio, what do you think about your fellow Brazilian's performance?
I think that I think she lost that fight, and I also had picked. I mean, they're both Brazilians, so I thought her opponent had a
more famous Brazilian. So.
I think she had. I think it was 1-1. No, I think the one I had her losing was the first and second, maybe.
You thought she lost the first round?
I think the second or third. I don't know which one I had.
I think Mackenzie won the first and third. I think the second was she clearly lost the second round. That wasn't even
she lost the second for sure. That's what I'm saying. But I don't remember if it was the first or the third that I thought she won. She lost as well. I just thought that I was more shocked that, talking about Brazilian doesn't want to go to the ground. That other girl's a very good grappler too. Like
they both wanted to stand. That was shocking to me as a fan.
Yeah.
I thought the whole thing was going to be on the ground, and they both were like.
What stood out to me though was Mackenzie's heart. Like, she was fighting through everything. So it was a close enough fight where I'm not going to say it was a robbery, but I thought she lost.
Yeah, that's really what I kind of wanted to bring out of that, of pointing out Mackenzie this episode, is that her heart. Like, we've never seen her in that situation where she's on the ground and blood's running into her eyes. She joked around about what it's finally like to feel like to have a broken nose, and she thought it was awesome. She's like, I finally know. She knew her coach was lying because he was trying to like pep talk her, and whenever he does that, she knows he's like full of crap. But I thought that was just a really cool moment, and the fact that she did pull it out. She could have quit after that second round when she kind of got demolished, and she came back and still won the round. So whether it was probably a good decision or bad decision, kind of irrelevant at that point, because I don't think it hurts or helps either fighter. I think Mackenzie Dern, though, wins a lot of points just for her hustle. Another big fight on that card. Anybody who's been in MMA for a number of years, especially going back to WEC, Cub Swanson's always been a fan favorite. And not only did he come out and piece up his opponent, like it just wasn't even a question. Like he just straight up, every time that even got close, you're talking about Pineda came in with somewhat of a hot streak, You thought Pineda was going to take him to the ground, grapple him, maybe tap out Cub. Cub was just tearing his butt up, like combos left and right. Sergio, what do you think of Cub's performance?
I have an interesting story with Cub. I'm not going to get into details with that, but I'm not a big fan of Cub. So fuck Cub Swanson, and I wish he would have lost that fight.
We just sat there and talked about not cursing.
Oh,
Sergio.
sorry. Sorry.
I give up.
Yeah.
Fuck it.
Yeah, I don't like that dude, man. I don't like him, man.
How do you not like Cub Swanson? And this is definitely gonna be a clip for Instagram now.
Couple years back, a long time ago, when Jose Aldo was at WEC, and when he fought him, I was connected with Aldo from the same team, and they when they used to come here, I cornered him, and I cornered this guy that used to be the Bellator champion, Marcus Loro Galvão. Mm-hmm. And I remember being in Loro's corner, and when he won one of his fights or whatever, and it was a decision, and Cub Swanson went on Twitter and was like, "Oh man, all Galvão does is win decisions. Like, when is this guy gonna learn how to fight?" I don't know. I said all the Novo União, which is the team, all the Novo União guys, all they do is win decisions. So I just screenshotted a little clip of him getting flying kneed by Aldo. I said, "Oh, I don't think this one was a decision," and I sent it to him. And he replied to me, and we just kept going back and forth.
He's actually very active on social media. He will reply to you.
Yeah, but that's what he says. Like, all these Novo União guys, that's all they do is win decisions. And then I remember sending him a clip. And I was like, I don't think this was a decision. And I think at the time I had like only 1 or 2 fights. Like, dude, I'm not gonna listen to you. You got like 2 fights. The fuck are you talking about? I said, and we just went back and forth. I said, look, I'm always at the events, man. If we see each other, let's add to that record.
Well, Brandon, without the hostility, what you think of Cub winning the fight?
Hey man, kudos to Cub, man, for getting that W. Like you said with Pineda, like, you know, I thought he would have took him down as well. But like what Sergio's kind of been saying in the last couple of shows, you know, is why would you play in somebody else's game, man? We all know Cub
I don't think he could get to the takedown.
Striker.
I don't think like every time he tried to go to takedown, Cub hit him with a combo.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. To me, man, like, I mean, he had his hands down. He was trying to slip a little bit. You know, it was like, dude, man, you know, you should always keep your hands up. But, you know, Cub came back and caught him.
I mean, Cub's looked impressive in his like kind of renaissance the last few fights he's had. It's not like this is the first fight. He's come back and looked good. I mean, you're talking about he just beat Kron Gracie. He had some tough losses to fighters like he lost a split decision to Shane Burgos, who we all know. He lost to Frankie Edgar, Brian Ortega. The only one that was really kind of somewhat disappointing is when he got caught in the rear naked choke to Renato. But other than that, he's been pretty successful lately since his loss to Max Holloway. So I don't think we should be surprised, but at the same time, it's kind of nice to see, you know, Cub's 37, for him to kind of come in, do what he did, despite Sergio's hostility. I thought it was still impressive. Maybe one day they can hug it out, but we'll see. Another fighter that made a lot of noise, Mr. Big Mouth himself, Kevin Holland. Unfortunately, we will not see him on this weekend's card, which is a shame because the news broke that Bilal's going to be out. Bilal Muhammad tested positive. So him and Diego Lima, that fight is off for UFC this weekend. But Kevin Holland came in. I was one that actually thought Jacare was going to catch him, get him on the ground, and submit him. I'll get to Sergio second because I think he has more to say about this being on the ground and stuff. But as far as a striking perspective, Brandon, he did get him on the ground, and Kevin Holland just punched him in the mouth. Like, he just kept like just hitting him, elbows and strikes, and ended up knocking out Jacare from a sitting position. Have you ever seen something like that?
Yeah, man, dude, that's just some serious power, man.
Especially to Jacare, it never happens.
Power right there. You know, like, I mean, it was a good fight. I mean, it's one of those things again, like I talk about sometimes, man, is with coaching. You know, like he has said, like, his coach, which is Travis Luter, who of course is a black belt in jiu-jitsu as well. They were confident, you know, if the fight went to the ground. So he was confident in the ground, which is why I always tell people, man, like, fighters give people space to get back up, you know, and usually sometimes for some reason people don't take it. But he did. He saw his opportunity to either get back up or to throw a strike. He took the strike because I think that's what he was going to do. He was going to take the strike and stand up. But then he saw when he took the strike that, you know, he basically fell back. He just jumped on Jacare and just finished the job.
Sergio, what'd you think?
Man, I thought I was a little bit impressed with the fact that Jacare gave him so much room to put his legs there and create that space to generate the punch. I think Jacare, I was hearing his corner in Portuguese telling him to make sure that he was very close to him and giving him no room to recover his guard and tell him to be careful with the triangle. That's
You
what
think
they kept saying.
Jacare kind of slept on him a little bit?
Slept on him on the ground. He was just like, yeah, it's safe, 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 safe. Right? Anyone who's fought or trained knows that for you to generate that kind of power, you need to have a distance, right? If you're in close proximity, if Jacare was inside of his guard and not allowing him, he wouldn't have generated that power. You can't generate that amount of power unless you're at a somewhat of a distance. And that's what Kevin Holland did. If you notice, you go back to the fight, he put his foot on his hips like he was going to get up. He was trying to get up. And then he that's a big distance for a guy that's long, and he tried to strike him. So I think Jacare should have just, maybe respected his power within that distance a little more instead of just saying, all right, he's on his back. He's not going to know shit. I'm going to dominate here.
I mean, I think Kevin Holland right now is probably the hottest fighter in UFC. I mean, he won 5 fights this year. He wanted to fight this weekend against Chimaev, which I don't know why.
Chimaev doesn't want that fight.
I don't think Chimaev's ducking him. I really don't.
Horrible fight. No, I don't care if he's ducking him, but I'm telling you, he does not want to take that fight. That's a guy whose confidence is through the roof. He's just beat a legend. He was
willing to fight Leon Edwards.
I'd rather fight. So what? It's a number. I'd rather fight Leon Edwards today, who hasn't fought in how long?
Yeah, probably a year.
All right. You're fighting a guy who fought 5 times in a year. The momentum and confidence is there. He's finishing all of that. He's not only winning fights, he's finishing fights. He finished Jordan Wright his last fight. He just finished Jacare. He finished Buckley, who's destroying everybody else.
He finished 4 out of 5. Yeah, he only split decision win over Stewart, but other than that.
So if you think about that, that's not a guy anybody should want to fight right now, let alone a guy like Chimaev at a weight above. So think about how Chimaev is out here saying, I'm sorry, my computer just almost shut off. Chimaev is saying that he will fight in any division, 70 or 85, and it doesn't make a difference. Holland said it best, and Holland was giving him like real sound advice. I think that guy can be a champion at 170. Don't come up and play with the big boys at 85 because you're gonna get hurt.
From what I've heard is that the only reason the fight didn't happen is one, that Chimaev had already gone back to Sweden. So in order to get him back, get him tested and get everything, they couldn't systematically get it done in time. Plus he had just done the whole weight cut trying to get down to 170, and it just wouldn't have been feasible for him to fight at 185. You're
going up, Mike. That argument makes no sense unless you're going down to 55. If you're going up, doesn't matter. You just cut to 70. That's one. 2, the UFC is smart. What they're not going to do is they're not going to put 2 hot prospects to fight each other, because guess what? There's a loser there. Where you can get a guy like Chimaev and have him fight Leon Edwards, who they want to get rid of, right? They've proven that they don't give a fuck about Leon Edwards, and get him out, versus Holland fights Chimaev. Somebody's going to lose, right? So somebody's stock is going to drop. Versus you can have 2 guys climbing at the same time, while eliminating guys like Jacare. Jacare probably got 4 or 5 times more money than Holland just did.
Say, man, he might be one of the guys getting cut, Jacare.
Yeah. So the UFC rather put a guy like Tyron Woodley to fight Chimaev, Leon Edwards to fight Chimaev, a guy that they're paying a lot of money to, especially Tyron Woodley. He's getting paid because he used to be a champ. Get rid of a guy like that by losing to a prospect who's getting the bottom of the barrel right now.
I mean, Kevin Holland's coming off 12 out of 14 wins, so very impressive. Only losses when he got caught in that rear naked choke to Brendan Allen, and then he lost a decision to Thiago Santos when Thiago was fighting at 185, and that's no shame in that loss either. So definitely something to keep an eye on. Ever since he's gotten to the UFC, he's just taking it by storm. So as Dana says, Mr. Big Mouth, Trailblazer Kevin Holland, he's definitely somebody to keep an eye out for. And somebody I definitely am looking forward to seeing what happens with him in 2021.
He's probably your fighter of the year.
I think he's got to be up there. I think, we'll talk about this real quick programming note. We did decide we are going to do at least one more episode this year. So next week will be most likely our year-end episode. So we'll talk about some of our highlights of the year. I think Kevin Holland's definitely, some of the performances of the year. I think there's been so many incredible fights this year. We're really going to have to sit down and talk about that and hammer that one out because, you know, everybody's going to talk about Deiveson Figueiredo and Brandon Moreno this week. Like they forget about Joanna and Weili. They forget about Jones and Reyes the first time. There's been so many incredible performances in 2020 that we kind of took the break because of COVID. So we miss, like people forget some of the fights that happened the first couple months. People forget about, you know, Conor coming in and wiping out Cowboy in January.
What about Shane Burgos versus Evan Smith?
There's another one.
I always call him Evan Smith, bro. Josh Emmett.
Josh Emmett, yeah. Josh Emmett looked incredible in that fight. And
man, fuck Josh Emmett too.
Burgos, damn it, Sergio. We're never gonna
Burgos look great. Burgos gonna look great.
Burgos did look great.
Yeah, man.
Man, we're never gonna get Cub on the show now. We're never gonna get Josh Emmett on the show now. Throwing Brandon under the train with his wife.
You might get those guys because they might come on want to curse me out.
Open invitation. Do us a favor. Open invitation. We will be happy to give you an open mic. Cub, Josh, open mic. Say whatever I will mute Sergio for 5 minutes. Y'all can say what you want.
Man.
That's our version of Victory Tuesday since we're still salty the Giants lost this weekend. All right, guys, another fight that we clearly need to talk about. Tony Ferguson, Charles Oliveira. Sergio, I'm going to go ahead and start with you because Charles Oliveira, you've been on that train for a while.
I'm going to cut you off, Mike. I'm going to start with.
Now, you've been on that train for a long time.
I told you so.
And, yeah, and I played devil's advocate last week. I believe Tony Ferguson was going to look a lot better. And I think Tony Ferguson against anyone else did look pretty good. Like, he showed, like, his heart. He was smothered. And he still kept trying to fight. Tony continues to show his heart. But Charles Oliveira, he looks like the guy who should be next.
1,000,000,000%. Listen, I said 7 fights, not only 7 wins, 7 finishes. And I'm going to chalk up that Ferguson fight as a finish. Okay? That fucking armbar. It was
never really competitive, yeah.
Wait, that armbar, if you guys remember that fight, Tony yelled. That's verbal tappage. The ref goes in the back and tells you before the fight. If you scream in pain and you're grimacing, and you're like, that's called a verbal tappage. He should have stopped that fight.
I mean, hear that.
He showed heart. He didn't. He couldn't use that arm at all.
To touch on one of the things you said earlier was that Tony Ferguson against anybody else, I think would have looked great. I think Oliveira is just a step ahead of everybody in that division. I think that's Oliveira's belt right now. Like he's the guy with the exception of Khabib. If Khabib is retired right now, clear cut, no question asked. I don't think anybody has looked as good as Oliveira has looked.
Brandon, is Oliveira next?
Hey man,
he got like 1 or 2 more wins yet?
Next, yo, I'm down. If Khabib, whatever happens, I know Khabib's gonna talk to Dana. Yo, if Khabib comes back, he's still the champ. Oliveira deserves the next shot, man. I would love to see Oliveira's ground game against Khabib's ground game.
Wrestling, bro.
See how it goes, you know. But either way, if Khabib isn't coming back, Oliveira deserves the next shot, and he should get the winner of Dustin and Conor. If that's how it's gonna go down. But
yeah, I listen.
What about Gaethje Chandler?
Bro, those dudes can wait. Those dudes can wait.
Yeah,
I agree that Oliveira's earned it. I think me and Sergio talked about this offline with favorites, and Dana has his guys. Dana has Conor, Dustin, Gaethje, and now Chandler as his top 4 with Khabib out of the picture. And Oliveira is messing up all of his plans. I mean, what I'm saying is that Oliveira, you know, he doesn't have the name, but he does have the resume. So I think he is definitely up next for the winner of Gaethje and, well, not Gaethje, I'm sorry, Poirier and McGregor, even though they're fighting in a different weight class. And I think Gaethje and Chandler will probably fight and it'll all work itself out, but it's going to be very interesting in 2021. Man, I'm super pumped to talk about this. Let's move on. Let's talk about that main event. Let's talk about Deiveson Figueiredo, Brandon Moreno, 5-round instant classic. So many variables to talk about in that fight, but let's just talk about what we know for sure. What happened, those 5 rounds, and I know both you guys, follow you guys on Twitter, both you guys actually thought maybe Moreno actually won that fight. I don't. I think Figueiredo won that fight. I thought he won 3 rounds to 2. The point loss caused the draw. The judges kind of agreed with me, but both you guys thought that Moreno might have won 3 of those rounds. Sergio, I'll start with you. Break down that fight and let's talk about it.
Man, I think Moreno did exactly what I thought he was going to do. I think when we did the breakdown, I said that if this fight, the longer it went, the more it would favor Moreno. I thought that he was going to be able to push the cardio. I thought he had the better cardio. I thought the fact that Figueiredo shown that he's had issue making weight, Moreno never did. Figueiredo has to travel back to Brazil. Maybe he didn't this time because it was so close, but usually he does travel back to Brazil, so going back and forth.
But Moreno did go back to Mexico for 48 hours and had to go through the whole thing coming back.
Yeah, but Mexico versus traveling to Brazil, I think it's a big difference. I think that another big factor in that fight was the fact that Figueiredo couldn't put him away early. And I think that if you can't put him away that early, I think if you don't win the fight early for Figueiredo, I think he showed that he had a lot of hard times. Same thing that when he fought.
Tell your dog stops trying to steal the spotlight.
Yeah, I saw her. She's trying to bite somebody. What's his name? Jared Brooks. When he fought Figueiredo in Brazil, it went later in the round, second and third. He kept getting taken down. He looks like he exhausts. He gets tired. And I thought that would be the difference maker there. I thought that was a great fight for both guys, though. I think Figueiredo did fight well. He hit Moreno with some big shots. Moreno has a chin, but we all know that about Mexicans. And I think that's, if you want to show an example of a fight that has to be a rematch, that's like the definition.
I don't think there's any question about that, Brandon.
No, yeah, there's no.
Brandon's definitely got to be a rematch. Go ahead.
You just have to find a date.
Go ahead, Brandon.
Hey man, like you said, I had Moreno winning it. I thought he won rounds 2, 3, and 4. Man, like because Sergio's gonna know this, man. Dude, like the whole time I'm watching that fight, and I see Moreno throwing that jab. The whole time he only kept on throwing one. My boxing coach, Ray Velez, always says throw more than one, man. He should have doubled up that jab.
He landed.
Because what would happen was, right, he would throw that jab, and that's when Figueiredo would just come over the top with that right hand to counter because he knew he was only going to throw one jab at him. But then plus two, now if you listen to the after fight interview, Moreno said that he did hurt his shoulder. So I don't know if maybe that's why he was only throwing one jab at a time instead of trying to double up and tripling it up. But that was just my only criticize on Moreno, because I really just think, man, if he would have just do more, if he would just double up that jab, triple up that jab, but sometimes I think he could have did a lot more damage.
I think the big debate, and arguably, I think the big debate comes to round 2, right? So round 2, and we'll the low blow. I think while it was it
was in round 3.
Well, no, I'm gonna get to that.
Oh.
The low blow, while it was a serious hit, I don't think it deserved a point off, because it wasn't like he kept hitting him in the low blow. It was just one time. I mean, I know it was a clean shot, but I really debate the fact that he should have taken a point so quickly without a warning. But that aside, especially in a championship fight, but that aside, the second round is really what it comes down to, right? Do you judge the takedowns versus the actual damage? Because every time in the second round, Moreno took him down, Figueiredo got right back up. Figueiredo's ground game is very underrated, and he gets right back up. His ability to get up, create space, use that momentum. Sergio, you know better than me. What Figueiredo did to get back up is crazy. I will talk, and we'll go. Let's talk about that weight cut too, because Sergio, you were one to mention on Twitter, and I kind of agreed with you. I didn't know if Brandon said anything or not too, but I'm sure he agrees as well. Figueiredo definitely looked tired after round 2, maybe even after round 1. Yeah. But he looked the same in round 5. Like, while he did, I agree. While he had a dump, he kept coming, and I think Figueiredo's only flaw in his fight was because he landed the big shots early. He stopped trying to mix it up. Like, if you notice from rounds, especially rounds 3, 4, and 5, where he got tired, you could see him literally just looking for the big shot. Like, he would stand in front of Moreno. He'd stand at the angle, just like waiting, like when you're going to open your guard, and then try to land big shot after big shot, which he did. I mean, Moreno has the heart of a champion. One day he's definitely going to be a champion. Shout out to Alex Soto, another fighter we talked to quite a bit, who definitely is big on the Moreno train. He thinks he was going to win this fight, as did many pros. But one, We found out later in the fight that Figueiredo fought the fight with food poisoning from the night before. So that's crazy. You got the weight cut, you got food poisoning, and then he still toughed out 5 rounds. So I don't think issues about his cardio will keep coming up after this fight. And I think no matter which side you're on, whoever won the fight, I definitely think it's an instant classic. Sergio, you were saying about 2021. When do you think we'll probably get this fight? I'm thinking it's probably going to be at least 6
Right
months.
away.
I think they got
Well,
time.
I think right away. I think as long as they're healthy, as long as it's not anything major, they're gonna do that fight.
I mean, they both went to the hospital.
Yeah, no, what I mean healthy, I mean like that's normal from the fight. After 4 weeks, they'll be back if there's nothing broken. So what I think about fight fans,
I think Moreno's arm is broken.
all right, that's different. So in that case, then yeah, longer.
You saw that knot from where he blocked the kick.
Yeah, but that's happened to me before. Not that extensive, but it's a hematoma from blocking kick.
Yeah.
I think that fight fans are very forgetful. And I think that if you don't take advantage of the people that are excited about this fight now, you might lose the fight, the hype if you do it later. Unless you don't have a choice, is what I'm saying. If the guys are ready to go early next year, in the first quarter of the year, January, February, March, you do it then.
I say March.
Let me ask you this, playing devil's advocate, Brandon. Let me ask you this. If Moreno can't go right away, and obviously I think the biggest Figueiredo didn't really have any marks on his face. Like, he took a lot of shots, but he kind of went right through him too. Figueiredo's biggest problem was the food poisoning. He probably needed an IV at the hospital. Probably needed to get his water levels back. The only other fighter out there that's been kind of waiting because he couldn't fight the Alex Perez fight was Cody Garbrandt. One, I think Figueiredo just runs right through Garbrandt right now, the way Figueiredo's fighting. Do we maybe see Figueiredo Garbrandt before we see Moreno again in the summer while Moreno has time to heal?
Nah, I think he waits. I think Figgy waits. Because I think that's what everybody wants. It's like the Khabib and Ferguson. Everybody wants that fight. Something happens. It's like, yo, people, just wait instead of trying to get another fight in because then you don't see what you want.
So, if Moreno's not next, who gets the next fight?
I like Garbrandt if he can make 25. I do like Garbrandt. I think that's a good fight for that division. I think the popularity of that division is not the highest. I think they're trying to build. I think these guys are bringing it back to validation. I think Moreno and Figueiredo did that. I think Perez would have done a good fight, but he got caught early. Maybe Royval. I don't know. Royval lost to Moreno, so it wouldn't make sense.
But he lost because of injury.
It has to be Cody. Oh, you know what? There's Oscar, who's undefeated, that Russian.
The only thing I'd say about Royval is he lost because of injury. He didn't lose because.
But at the end of the day, so did Anderson. Anderson lost to Wyman because of injury.
No, that's true. But they did run it back.
It's gonna go back on the record as a loss, injury, TKO. So no one cares.
I just think that Royval he's probably only a fight away. I think.
I think that guy Oscar, that's his name.
Yeah, if he comes back and wins impressively, I think Royval could be in the picture.
That Oscar guy, the Russian guy, he beat. He had a draw, I think, with Moreno. They had a draw.
Yeah, I could see Royale versus Perez next.
Yeah.
I could see that. We just don't know Royval's injury. Like, his shoulder completely dislocated. So who knows if he tore any kind of, if it's just a simple pop back in, or if it's something that might have torn a tendon or something like that. So we'll have to follow up on that.
Oh yeah, I just wanted to go back to one thing that you had said, Mike, about the point deduction with the groin kick. I'm not in Jason Herzog's head, but I want to say I think the reason why he did take away a point was because also earlier in the fight, Figueiredo also eye poked Moreno as well. So I'm saying he did an eye poke, he did a groin strike. So it's like, hey, let me take away a point now.
And real quick before we move on to picks, shout out to Brandon Moreno's acting skills, because later in the fight when they were on the ground, and after he'd already been poked in the eye, every time Figueiredo put his hand up on his face, he acted like he got poked in the eye. He'd be like, "Oh my God, my eye!" Even though you can see the replay, it was nowhere near his eye. And like,
I'm biased. I think Jason Herzog is one of the best, if not the best referee.
I think he's a very good ref.
but he's a friend of mine as well. He's a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. So but
Portuguese.
I think he did a really good job. I think the point deduction was warranted because that did affect the fight. I think Moreno was putting the pace, and that slowed him down. What are you gonna do? You have to stop. You get hit in the groin like that.
Though he did come out on fire after that break because he was so angry.
Yeah.
I think that tends to happen more often than not. A guy gets hit low and like now he's mad.
You also get a rest.
Yeah, both of them got a rest. I mean, Figueiredo definitely needed that rest. That rest actually probably helped Figueiredo go the last few rounds.
That's what I'm saying. So it makes sense for you to penalize him for doing something like that, because now, if not, you know what's going to happen, right? Guys, when they're exhausted, they need a break. That's what they're going to do.
No, I think it was a clean shot, and I think it's definitely. If it was not a championship fight, I would say take the point. But because it was a championship fight and it wasn't something that happened repeatedly, like he didn't just keep hitting him like below the belt. And maybe Brandon's right. Maybe it's because of the eye poke earlier. But I don't know. Like that right there changed. Like from that point on, Figueiredo had to like control those last couple rounds because then he would have lost. And then he actually lost the fourth round, in my opinion. I think Moreno won the third and fourth. The second, I think, is the one people debate on whether the takedowns meant anything, because Figueiredo did more damage and Moreno had the takedown. So that's the debate. But that's what we're here for. Let's move on to picks. Coming up this weekend, UFC Vegas 17. Wonder Boy Stephen Thompson back in the cage. It's been a while. He's going to be matching up against Neal. Sergio, you want to go ahead and start and tell me who wins and why?
I like Stephen Boy, man, one the time. I think he's always had a specific style that gives a lot of guys a hard time. I think that karate style, in and out, I think he adapted it really well to mixed martial arts. I mean, there are a couple of guys that do it, but I think he's one of those guys that every time he gets to the top, he can't pull the trigger. And I think that, we might see a little run with him. I think he hasn't been in action for a while, right? When was the last time we saw him fight? Was it with...
Stephen Thompson's last fight was all the way back
it's been a while.
13 months ago, November of last year against Vicente Luque.
Okay. I like him in this fight. I know Jeff Neal is a really good. He's another guy like Leon Edwards. A lot of people don't speak about him. He's 13-2. People
won
don't
7 in a row, including just beating Perry back last year.
Yeah, people don't give those guys enough credit. I think him and Leon Edwards. I think they're a lot better than what they're. So I think their fighting style, even though he does get knockouts, I think their fighting style is a little bit not as exciting, and people don't remember it. But I think Thompson is his kryptonite. I think he stays on the outside. If Neal can't get on the inside, I think Thompson's a lot bigger. He's gonna have a good night, and he's faster too.
Brandon, who you got?
Man, I'm not gonna lie. I'm a big fan of Wonder Boy. I actually was thinking about picking him, but then I just started doing some more thinking since Sergio was talking, and I started thinking about it.
Please go with Neal, so I'm not alone this week.
I'm gonna go with Jeff Neal. Reason being is because one, Jeff Neal is a power puncher. He's a power puncher. Now at 170, I do think that Wonder Boy has the best striking in that division at 170, but I think also too that Jeff Neal trains at Fortis MMA. Who else trains at Fortis MMA? Uriah Hall. Uriah Hall also has a karate background, good striking. I think he can give him some good look. I can give him some similar looks.
Isn't Thompson training with Weidman and them now?
Yes. Yeah. So, but I mean, he usually trains he's training his wrestling with Weidman and them like that. Because I think they're brother-in-laws. But I mean, Fortis MMA is on the come up. I mean, that's a good team. They have a good coach. They're making some noise. So yeah, I think Neal's gonna do it.
Personally, I think Neal too. I think maybe there's a couple factors. I do kind of wonder if the wrestling with Weidman is going to pay off for Thompson, kind of give him a new weapon to play with, something maybe we haven't seen before. But Jeff Neal just got done knocking out Mike Perry, knocking out Nico Price, who nobody knocks out. Nico Price is like either knock out or get knocked out. But to knock out Nico Price in the second round and stop him that early in the fight, I think that's super impressive. He just outpointed Bilal Muhammad. All three of those fights were last year. I think the younger fighter, I think you look back, his last loss, his only Jeff Neal's only loss since 2013 is to Kevin Holland, who we just got talking about, maybe fighter of the year. So I got Jeff Neal. He's 30 years old. To Thompson's 37. You never know when a fighter is going to start to slow down. I'm not saying Thompson is, because he's had a whole year or so to like rest, but you never know. I got Jeff Neal. In the co-main of that card, we're talking about this fight. I'm actually looking forward to more than the main event. Jose Aldo, Marlon Chico Vera. Brandon, I'll start with you this time. Who you got?
Man,
That's that nervous laugh right there. He's like,
yeah,
who
because
do I pick?
I always rock with Jose Aldo, but for some reason I think Chito Vera's taking it. He's on the come up. He wants his recognition. He wants to be in the top 5. He wants to get his title shot. I think he's gonna go in there, and I think he's gonna just take out Aldo, and he's gonna stop him. I think Aldo's gonna get stopped.
Brandon, Aldo's coming off 3 straight losses.
Yeah, like I said, I just think Chito. Like I said, I think Vera's gonna come in and he's gonna stop him. And then honestly, if Aldo loses, I could see him getting his walking papers too.
Sergio, those last 3 losses though were all against champions.
I got Jose Aldo winning, man. I like Marlon Vera a lot. His last fight was with Sugar Shane. Didn't see much. I think Sugar Shane.
The fake Conor McGregor, as Vera said.
I think Sugar Shane is overhyped. I don't think that's a feather in his cap. Meaning it's a fight he won. Yeah, congratulations. But you're now fighting a different level of competition. I think Jose Aldo is on a 3-fight losing streak to champions. However, looked really good in a couple of those fights. I think the fight that stood out to me was the one with
Marlon
Moraes, yeah. And Moraes is on this card as well. That's going to be a fun fight.
He also went the distance with Volkanovski, too.
Yeah, I like Jose Aldo, man. I think it's a huge step up in competition for Vera. I think he hasn't fought anyone close to Aldo. And I think it's not Aldo's time to go yet. I think Aldo's still got a couple fights in his.
I don't think it's Aldo's time to go yet. I mean, his last 6 losses have all been against somebody who's held gold before. Obviously, Marlon held it over in World Series of Fighting. But Peter Yan's currently the champion. Volkanovski's currently a champion. Max Holloway's been a champion. Conor McGregor's been a 2-division champion. So those losses aren't nothing to hang your head on. He's still only 34. People forget, as long as Jose Aldo's been fighting, he's 34 years old. That said, I'm actually still going with Vera. I think Vera's on the come up. He'd won 5 fights even before he lost to Song, and then came back and beat O'Malley. That O'Malley thing, one thing that drives me crazy is that Sean, and this is what's pissing off Vera too, is that Sean O'Malley's not giving Vera credit for the loss. He doesn't understand that it was a leg kick that caused his ankle to go like sideways. Like, he doesn't understand. I don't think O'Malley has enough MMA experience to understand that. And this is actually, I'll be honest, I didn't even know this until I heard a lot of people break it down after the fight, is that when you hit a certain part of your knee, like behind the knee or wherever it is, and maybe you guys can tell me better, your whole leg kind of like shuts down below your knee.
I mean, I never heard that specifically. I mean, obviously, I know that if you're taking that kind of damage, it's going to hurt and it's going to damage your leg. But I never heard there's a specific way to do it. I never trained for that.
Yeah, when Vera hit that, and they were talking about it after the fight, they were talking about, because there's nerves behind the knee, and the way he was hitting those leg kicks, it actually is what caused O'Malley's like ankle and everything else to kind of shut down temporarily in that fight. Brandon, do you ever know something about like that?
No, not really. No, because I know usually like if you hit the back of the knee, like the knee can bend. Like that's why I always tell people, like, you want to hit the front. That way there's no give. But I mean, it could be something new.
Yeah, I guess they're always finding something.
Keep in mind though, Sugar Shane did have an injury, a serious injury that he was out for a year with his knee and his ankle.
Yeah,
so
it could have.
Maybe it just never healed the proper way. He wasn't ready to come back, and
Yeah, I think if they run it back though, I think Vera wins again.
Vera's by far the better fighter, but I just think
he's just a fun fighter. I love watching Vera fight. He is so fun to watch. He's been in so many wars. I still remember going back. What was it, that John Lineker fight that went back and forth for a while a few years ago? I love watching Vera fight, and I do think he's going to beat Aldo. I hope it's not the end of the road for Aldo, but that would be 4 losses in a row. So the way they're kind of cutting some of these fighters who have been around for a long time, we'll see. All right, guys, you ready to get into some fan questions? Ladies first, let's go ahead and start up with Tune-Up Crew Captain. Of course, Brandon's wife. Tell her we all say hello. She wanted to know if you could play matchmaker and fight between any fighters in any promotion, who would it be? Sergio, I'll start with you this week.
Any fight, any promotion. Number one that comes to my mind is Usman versus Douglas Lima. I know he's coming off a loss when he moved up in weight. But that's one. Another fight that really sounds good to me would be Volkanovski and Pitbull. I like that one a lot. I think those two are the ones that stick out to me the most.
Brandon?
Me, I actually want to see Pitbull, but I want to see him versus Max Holloway. I'd rather see that fight instead. And then, if I could get another one.
Why not? Sergio did.
I know, right? You know what I want to see? I want to see the rematch that we all got denied. Chris Cyborg, Amanda Nunes.
That's a great one.
That's what I want to see.
I'll go different than you guys. I know we're all talking about Figueiredo matching up against Moreno again, maybe even Cody Garbrandt. I would absolutely love to see Figueiredo and Mighty Mouse. Because don't forget, Demetrius Johnson isn't done. He's getting ready to fight this next year for one. He's back in the cage soon. Demetrius Johnson, pound for pound, has been one of the best fighters on the planet for probably almost a decade at this point, at least 5-6 years. And because he lost one fight to Henry Cejudo, Triple C. Thank you. All of a sudden, Dana finally had a chance to make some moves, and they did that whole trade for Ben Askren. But truth be told, Demetrius wanted out of the UFC as well. He wanted more respect. He wanted more money, and he's got that with ONE FC. He's going to be fighting for a title soon. But that's the fight I want to see. I would love to see Figueiredo and Demetrius Johnson, because to me, Demetrius is still the king of that weight class until somebody else. Triple C did it. Henry did it. But they're 1-1. I want to see them run it back too. So that's another fight I would love to see. So give a Tune-Up Crew Captain a follow on Twitter. We'll make sure to put a link in the show notes. Another question off Twitter. I'm too smooth for you, from a gentleman named Sergio. He had a couple questions. His first one was, what were our thoughts on this past weekend? I think we kind of already shared that. Should it have been a draw or not? I don't think we really touched on that. Do you guys think it should have been a draw?
No, I thought Moreno won the fight.
Yeah, no, exactly. Yeah, I thought Moreno won the fight too.
I think for a fight stake, I think it was good that it was a draw because it sets up the rematch. That's my pick on that one.
But I think if it was, even if they did give the belt to Moreno, I think they still do the rematch because Figueiredo fought so well and he was dominating guys.
It was an instant classic.
Yeah.
And his other question, well, it's kind of two-part. We already touched on this in kind of length too. What we thought of Yoel being released, and the follow-up was, is the UFC hurting the brand with an event every weekend? I think we've already talked about the Yoel release, so I'll kind of leave that alone. We know that was more a financial thing, and he's obviously clearly in Bellator now, so we're looking forward to that. But that's always been the question for the last few years since UFC started running so many events. They brought on John Anik, let Mike Goldberg go because Goldberg really only wanted to do the pay-per-views. They brought in guys like Felder and Dan Hardy and some of the other guys, and so they have more of announced crews, and they're just running events all over the place. Brandon, what do you think of that?
My answer to the question is, yeah, that's something that we've been talking about. Like you said, it's a conversation been going on for years, man. And the thing is, they've been doing quantity shows, but not really all quality shows. There are times where the shows that you don't think about, that really don't have the no names in it, those are usually your best shows because you usually get a whole bunch of finishes and everything like that, and everybody be like, oh man, this was a great show. But the thing is, man, we got a show every single week. People do want to go out, they want to live their lives, they want to do other things.
We want to talk about actual stories.
Yeah, that's really the thing. With casuals really only come to really pay-per-views, or if there's big names,
big fight.
That's why you want to get those quality shows instead of just quantity shows, and that's why you hear now the UFC is talking about cutting 60 people because the reason that they're doing a show every week. Well, now they're going to just start letting people go because they're just what's the point?
Sergio, I would play devil's advocate, and I actually agree. I think they are watering down the brand quite a bit, but I will play devil's advocate. There's so many fighters in the world. Sport is blowing up bigger than it's ever been. And you just said yourself, if they don't run Figueiredo Moreno back soon, people forget about it. What's your answer to the question?
I'm okay with them running as many shows. I don't think they're watering down the product. I think we are getting to see a lot of guys that are really good and wouldn't have gotten this opportunity if they weren't doing fights this often. I like the idea. I like watching the fights every week. I mean, then again, I'm a homebody, man. Like, to touch Brandon's, like, people want to go out, live their lives. Like, I can sit down and watch fights all day long. I have no problem with that. So I'm a different example. But I do think that does it kill the anticipation of the huge blockbuster cards? Yeah, absolutely. You can't argue that. But at the same time, there are enough fighters in the world that you can make every card good. I think they just have to do a better job with, man. Some of these fights you see, you're like, this person shouldn't be fighting this person, But they're fighting a lot. They're finding a lot of really good guys, man. This fight this weekend with how do you pronounce his name? With Moicano and Faiz?
Fizzies?
Him. That's a fight that could have been like a co-main event, man. That's a great fight. Those they were somewhere, in the card. So many fights that there's a lot of fights. I think that to answer your question, instead of cutting down shows, you can keep this amount of shows, do a better job matchmaking.
Yeah, I could see that. And obviously right now dealing with COVID, it's a different situation because people are at home. They're taking advantage. They're putting some on TV. UFC was one of the first sports to come back.
The first sports, I think.
Yeah,
back, right?
after the pandemic really kind of went full swing. When they went over to Fight Island and then Bellator followed shortly, and MMA has been trucking along pretty much through most of this pandemic. But I would say I do think it misses the big fight feel. Like, I think, they're trying to be like football, baseball, basketball. There's a show every week. And when you look at it like that, no, there's not too many events, but at the same time, you gotta build stuff. And I don't think they take time to build stuff. When you got Figueiredo and Moreno, a fight that was a classic, but it only had 2 weeks really to build. You have Kevin Holland trying to jump right back in the cage against Chimaev. That's great. It's a cool story. But when you have a fight like John Jones, Daniel Cormier, and they've built it up for months, Stipe and Cormier's final fight this year, which is another fight like people forget happened this year because so much stuff has happened. I think what it does is I think it makes people short-sighted. For instance, everybody's talking about Figueiredo Moreno being fight of the year because they've already forgot about everything else that's happened this year because it's, what have you done for me lately? What's in their brain right now? What's the latest news story? So I think from a business standpoint, I don't think they're necessarily hurting themselves. I think they're making more money than ever because they have that contract with ESPN. But I think from a fan standpoint, I do miss the big events. I do miss the build-up for a Conor McGregor or a big Anderson Silva fight or GSP. Some of these fights that had to build up. You talk about a Mike Tyson fight or a Floyd Mayweather fight that in boxing that you build up. So yeah, I think they are watering it down. What were you about to say, Brandon? I know you want to jump in.
Yeah, no, I was gonna say even you could just go look at the Mike Tyson Roy Jones Jr. fight, right? That same Saturday night, there was a UFC card, right? I'm scrolling through my Twitter. Everybody's talking about Roy Jones Jr. and Mike Tyson. Even all the MMA media, it's like your job is to cover MMA.
Even Dana was watching it in the back.
Not even talking about it.
Even Dana White was watching it on a separate screen in the back.
Yeah, and so it's like man, like you're gonna get crushed because people are gonna be like, oh, you know what? There's nobody on this card that I care about. I'm just gonna watch Mike Tyson, Roy Jones, and I'm gonna just pay attention to that.
And I can't even remember what weekend it was, but it was actually a pretty good card.
Yeah, it was Thanksgiving weekend.
Yeah, who was that fight that weekend? Now I'm like forgetting.
Because that wasn't the Vittori fight, was it?
No, it was before that.
Yeah,
Vittori was just a couple weeks ago. I want to say, and I think it was maybe the Anthony Smith card?
Yeah, that's right.
And Devin Clark.
Yeah, that's right. It was Anthony Smith card because I think that's what I was watching something. So I was saying oh, you're gonna go with like Anthony Smith, as your headliner for this. I mean, because originally it was supposed to be Curtis Blades and Derek Lewis, but they got pulled. So now it's like, oh, you got Anthony Smith going up against Mike Tyson and Roy Jones. Yeah, I'm gonna probably pick the boxing circus going on.
All right, last question, guys, and I'm gonna let you guys get out of here and get on with your days. Stephen Green from Instagram at Green Steve M. Tisha Torres looked good enough to beat anybody in her division on Saturday. Do you think she's that good, or do you think she only looked that good because her level of opponent? I'll start off and I'll kick to you guys. I think she only looked that good because of the level of her opponent. I think if that was Angela Hill, who was originally supposed to be, I think that's a different fight, a fun fight. I think it was a very fun fight of her and Angela Hill matching up, but I think Angela Hill takes that fight. Brandon, what do you think? King of the ladies fighters. What does he think?
She would have beat the brakes off that girl easily. Hey, I like Tisha Torres. I'm a fan of Tisha Torres, but I think that girl hasn't had a finish since like 2013 or something like that. She gets this.
I was shocked this had a finish. I was shocked.
Yeah, you know, like I'm saying, she gets this newcomer. You know, she gets a stoppage out here. Hey, kudos to her, man. She looked good. She did her job, did what she's supposed to do. But hey, man, let's be real. If Angela Hill was in there, she would have probably got stopped. If she would have probably fought Michelle Waterson, she probably would have lost that fight too. So I mean, hey, she looked good, but I mean, I didn't really see anything because again, you're looking at the level of competition. You know, it wasn't an Angela Hill or Michelle Waterson or anybody like that in her division.
Well, in fairness, she did beat Waterson 3 years ago.
Yeah.
Sergio, what do you think?
I think there's two parts to this question that you asked. First, do I think Tisha Torres is good and she's real in the division? Yes, absolutely, I do. I think she can be even a champion in that division. I think she's really good, man. She's always stood out to me. She definitely could be up with the competition. I think if I agree with you, Mike, I think a fight with Angela Hill would have been actually a lot of fun, and I think Tisha could have won or not, but I think it would have been close. But I do think the level of competition also played a factor, and being the fight is on short notice also played a factor. I know that fight was like days notice, right? A couple of days?
Yeah, like probably like a week.
Yeah, so I think that did play a factor, but I think
they were lucky to even get a fight in because originally it was going to be off the card.
Yeah, I think she is the real deal, though.
All right, folks. We will be back for one more episode this coming week. And that one, I think, will probably be our last episode of the year. Maybe we squeeze in two, but we're going to try our best with the holidays and everything. Everybody be safe out there. I do want to send a quick shout out. Shorty Rock Sean Santella has been going through quite a bit lately in his personal life. Let him know that we're thinking about him. He's always been great to Art of MMA, and let him know that we definitely are in our thoughts. And then I actually have a personal one, a good friend of mine, and I'll put a show note in the link, just recently lost somebody very close to her. During the holiday season, that's no fun. 2020 has taken way too many people from us. All of us have felt some pain this year. So I'm going to put a show note. I don't really do this, I don't really try to ask people to contribute and do things like that, but I am going to put a link in our show notes. If you guys want to check out her story and contribute, that would be amazing. Other than that, let's end the show on a high note. Definitely looking forward to Thompson and Neal this weekend. That's going to be great. The holidays are coming up. So, ladies and gentlemen, this has been Art of MMA for Sergio and Brandon. We will see you next week. Have a good one.
Thanks, guys.